One of the government whips, the Vice Chamberlain of the Household, writes Her Majesty a dispatch every evening to tell her what MPs have been debating. In the first year of the Blair government, this task fell to Janet Anderson, who's just published her missives in a volume called Dear Queen. BBC Radio 4 has dramatised a small selection of Janet's more piquant offerings.
Wednesday, 8th of April. Your Majesty. Last day before the Easter Hall, so suffice it to say that honourable members are demob happy. At 3 p.m, Madam Speaker announced questions to your Prime Minister. Only today it was your Deputy Prime Minister and Secretary of State for the Environment, Transport and the Regions. When does he sleep?
2 million jobs being lost from our manufacturing sector.
And when John Bercow, a rather odious little Tory MP from Buckingham, tried to provoke your Deputy Prime Minister, he certainly got a reaction. This was the man, he boomed, who had been chairman of the National Federation of Conservative Students when Norman Tebbit closed it down because it was
too right-wing.
More, cheered Labour backbenchers.
Mr Michael Fabricant.
Michael Fabricant, the Conservative MP for Mid-Staffs, who looks for all the world as though he wears a wig, but won't admit it, could be described as
hair today, gone tomorrow.
Monday, 8th June. Your Majesty, your Secretary of State for Social Security, Harriet Harman, was first up for questions today. Poor Harriet. It is almost impossible to see her in action now without recalling the hatchet job done on her by the Observer newspaper last week. One really does wonder whether she is going to recover. Janet Anderson MP with humble duty reports Tuesday, 9th of June 1998. Your Secretary of State for Social Security, Harriet Harman, was even spotted in the smoking room buying rounds of drinks. Or at least one round, anyway. I can assure Your Majesty this is not a regular occurrence. Tuesday, 16th of June. Your Majesty.
Mr John Bercow.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Given that 89% of
Mr John Bercow introduced a 10-minute rule bill to prevent anyone who does not pay income tax or is resident outside the country from benefiting from legal aid. Seems rather sensible, but what a shame it had to be introduced by such a tiresome little man. Bercow constantly bores us with his attempts to be more clever than anyone else.
Almost 11% of average earnings in the United Kingdom, by contrast with a figure of only 3.5%.
Reeling off statistics and so on. So irritating did this become in a recent debate on sport that Labour wag Stephen Pound from Ealing was moved to comment, "Personally, I'd rather have a sex life."
And the author of those rather fruity revelations, Janet Anderson, is with us now. And we're also joined by the current occupant of that role, the Conservative MP, Chris Hopkins. Well, you racy beast. What were you writing all those things to the Queen for?
Well, Jo, I thought she could read Hansard if she wanted a parliamentary report.
Yes.
And I did get the sense when I met her that she had a very good sense of humour, and I'm sure Chris would say the same. And I just thought she might appreciate some of the gossip. What went on in the bars and the tea room and what everyone was saying about each other. And I actually think she did.
Did she give you feedback?
Not directly. It's a one-way communication.
Yes.
But other people did. The Prime Minister did. Nicholas Soames did, actually, who's a great friend of the royal family. And also her private secretary, Robert Fellows, said to me how much she'd enjoyed it. And she used to read it, and still reads it, I assume, Chris, every evening before dinner.
Yes.
It's taken by a special messenger.
I bet, as aperitif, no doubt, before the main course arrives. Chris Hopkins, are you going to write these daily digests, which is the role of the Vice Chamberlain, to fill in the Queen with what's been happening in Parliament? Janet Anderson perhaps adopted a slightly more radical approach. Are you going to do the same?
Well, I've been doing it for a year, and the content of those will remain, of course, private, and it is a great privilege to write to Her Majesty. I understood, actually, it was against the Official Secrets Act to publish these, so I think there may be space in the Tower for you if they find out.
Well, and talking of the Tower, you get taken hostage, don't you,
Yeah.
by the Queen. Tell us about that in your role.
Oh, it's traumatic. I'm picked up by a car and fed a biscuit and a cup of coffee, I think.
Is it? Oh, is that as torturous as it becomes?
To the palace. So,
And why do you do this?
Well, there was a slight problem a few years ago, a couple of centuries ago, where one member of the royal family came to the palace and didn't return. So